So having made a new nut, I need to fit this into the end of this. Now there's a bit of a question mark here. The way that this fixes into this is with these two 3/16 Whitworth screws, and they just lock half in this, and they lock it in place. But you can see, this is the old nut, how these are not perpendicular at all. These, where they've drilled and tapped these half and half screws, they're not perpendicular at all. Now why is that? Look, the silver one is way over to my left. They both splayed out from each other. Was there a reason? Do they need to be like that in order to lock this fully, where two perpendicular pins wouldn't really do the job? You know, your guess is as good as mine. Was the person just drunk, or was it for very clever reasons? Now it's a bit awkward if I simply start again and drop this bronze nut into here. What might happen if I try and drill it in position, because this is tougher than the bronze, the drill might run off completely. I could try and reuse these, but then if I just drop that nut in and then I drill into these, it'll move away from the bronze and it'll take the threads off this. So it needs a fair bit of thought. Well, I've learnt something here. When I made that blank, we saw this went into here, no problem. In fact, I even thought it was a bit loose. It won't go in now, and when I measure across here, it's 24.05, and this needs 23.85. So that suggests, doesn't it, that this is expanded by tapping it. It's spread by 0.2 of a millimetre. Now it's about 0.1 of a millimetre here, but at the ends it's 0.2. It's crazy, isn't it? Never thought of that. So this is going to have to be machined again. Not a problem, just need to do it. Let's see if this is anything like 50-50. In other words, are these 180 degrees apart, or was it all done by eye? That side looks all right. If I can find the right hole from this way, I'll have to check that. Yeah, that is 180. No, it's not quite, is it? It's close. Well, it's probably near enough, actually. Okay, so they started at 180. Look at this. This isn't just a Friday job, is it? That's got to be deliberate. They've drilled it in at an angle that way. For a reason. It's got to be for a reason, hasn't it? I always think these things are. Yeah. So we need to replicate that somehow, assuming that the original people who put it together knew what they were doing. Got to be a reason. Well, I've decided to reuse the drilled and tapped holes in this. And to line it up, I've got this indexing base on the tilting table. I've got this drill in as a reference, and if I hold that drill there, you can see I've got it pretty close. I will bring it in so you can see. Now it's a lot easier on this side, the one I'm going to do first, because this drilled hole is perpendicular at least in one direction, even though, you know, it's angled in this way. This side will be a lot harder because it's not perpendicular in either direction. I know for some people you don't believe it till you see it. So as best I can tell, that and that are parallel, and if we come round to this side, you should see the same. So I'll try not to drill this silver drill down into the bottom of this tube, but there you are. Well, I've done something really stupid now. I was putting that bush in to machine it, and I've got it stuck. So when I'd resized it, I'd clearly got a ridge on it or something, and I can't shift it. So I'm going to freeze it, because the coefficient of expansion of steel is about 1/100th of a millimetre per degree C, and of bronze is about 2/100ths of a millimetre per degree C. So if I can bring this down by, I don't know what, 10, 20, maybe 20 degrees or more, maybe 30, I'm hoping I can get that out without too much damage. I've damaged this edge here a bit, but I'm going to have to machine this bit anyway because there's a ridge on it I need to take off. Oh, what a silly thing to do. Just a bit of phone video. So we'll leave that in there for a while, maybe try and get it down at least 20 degrees centigrade, Celsius, not mix it up with a rhubarb. Now I worked out that 20C should give me a differential expansion of 0.1 of a millimetre or 4 thou. So hopefully that's enough to get it out. Sorry, I'm a bit out of breath with this. I've been pulling and pulling. I've got it, as you can see. It was in the freezer for an hour and a half. And I just managed to move it. I wonder if the hole in here is tapered somehow. Anyway, it's made quite a lot of marks on the end of this, and it may have made it tight on the thread, but I don't know. It's lesson learnt. I'll clean that up. You can just see the ridge. It must have been, I don't know, I can't even feel it. I wonder if this is tapered. You can see the frost on it still, look. I can't measure it, unfortunately. I think the battery in my sensor has gone, of course. What we got there? It's only showing -2.5. It's probably more than that. Colder, I mean. Well, we're getting to the bottom of this, and I'm pleased to say it wasn't me. So that is 23.83. As I go down that hole, it gets tighter. When I measure this, it's narrow at this end. You can see it's quite roughed up, so they've just filed or ground or something. It starts off quite slack. By the time it gets to here, it's getting tight. So this, the hole in there is tapered. Yeah, that's the problem. There you are, look, my bush is spot on for that. I mean, if anything, it is just a fraction too snug. 23.83. So the original bush starts at 23.8, but the other end is 23.74. Well, having thought about this a bit more, I've decided to taper my bush like this bush is tapered by 2 thou across this length, because they'd been making that machine for about 30 years by then, and it makes sense to me, if you got screws here which are angled in to lock it in, that they might actually taper it to make it a wedge fit. Now if it happened by accident, so what? I'm still going to do it. So we'll use these tapes which Brad sent me. Brad sent me quite a few things I haven't had a chance to show you yet. But anyway, if you are watching, Brad, these are going to come in very handy. Perfect. Took no effort to take that little bit off, you know. This bush is really quite soft. Nut, I should say. Well, I think this is lined up as best I can get it. Well, if it's a problem, I think there's just a little bit too much movement in this bearing that mounts the chuck. I mean, it's probably all right for the Ford Transit wheel, but it's not good enough for this. Not at this length, anyway. When I start it, you might see this vibrate a bit. And then, of course, you know, whatever is in the column, the head, the table, this on this, you know. Oh, and I haven't said yet, have I? My mill doesn't have a quill. So, and of course it hasn't got the height anyway, so this pillar drill is my only option. Well, it's not working. Whatever I try, the drill, the cutter, anything runs off to this side. So we got a plan B, and that is I'm going to try drilling 2 new holes. Doesn't really matter where. I'll just try and make it 90 to those, or thereabouts. Well, we're getting somewhere. I use this centre drill, which is of course much more rigid, and I've managed to get started on both sides. Yeah, and it's about 50-50 into the steel and the bronze, but whether it'll stay like that, I don't know. I've decided we're just going to go with it, and we'll just live with whatever happens. I hope these angles are right, because I don't want it going into the thread and obstructing the screw. And of course the drill will have deflected as it went in. So as I'm trying to tap this, I could easily snap the end of the tap off. And the tapping hole's a bit tight anyway, 3.5 rather than 3.7. It started, maybe if I go to an intermediate, which I can't find. Here we are. It's binding up a bit, this. Well, with great care, I've managed to get them both the same. 3 different taps, a taper, intermediate and a plug. Being very, very careful. So that went to about there, and that's about there. So I think we'll be okay once I've cleaned this out. It's gone tight, certainly. Don't know if I'll need to put anything on it, maybe a little bit of bearing retainer Loctite, you know, the stuff that's not too strong. Well, in fact, the screws have emerged slightly into the thread, but not by much. The roughing part of this tap went through with no problem at all. It's just a little bit into the root of the thread. And actually it will serve to hold those screws so they don't unwind. I think that'll do it. You know, I've come to the conclusion there was probably no cleverness at drilling in an angle like that. I think probably what happened, the drills just ran off. Could have saved me a huge amount of work if I'd realised that. But you don't know, do you, what you don't know? Well, I think we're done finally. I'm just going to trim the end of this bush just to make it look a bit nicer. That's taken a lot of work, but I've learnt a lot. Finished.